motorcyclists to veer on the side of caution when going around hairpin bends. Oh, and then there are goats everywhere, and cattle. So it's definitely a place not to tear around. So 40 Ks, yeah, and good brakes, making sure that hiring a bike with good brakes. So yeah, as I toured around, I ended up at this artist residency just by chance. I'd not known about this Russian artist. And there was a whole legacy there of his works. You know, like he had left a large legacy. He was also a theosophist, so as part of the whole, this is a religious movement, a new religious movement in the 90s called spiritualism, where she was a Russian, a Russian spiritualist, so decided to run away from her marriage and tour the world and began the Theosophical Society. And Krishnamurti was the prodigy. This was an Indian young person that was taken off from the street from poverty and brought up to be the Messiah. So she was a character, and started a whole movement based on teachings that were basically Hinduism. So, but a revivalist Hinduism. There's lots of that happening. That happened and became new religious movements. I actually could attest to being part of one of them in the not that particular movement, but the Brahma Kumaris in the 80s for 5 years. So I then studied that at university, the phenomenon of new religious movements, and so it was interesting stumbling across this one because it was a whole legacy of this new religious movement that this particular artist had actually been part of, but was also actually a authentic artist in the sense of a painter. So he's a painter of the Himalayas, but on the side was also a theosophist, but not a writer. He wasn't a writer of Indian philosophy, although I would have read. He was a reader, but more of a painter. So he wanted to capture this spiritualism through, or the transcendental, through depicting the Himalayas in different forms, and that was inspiring. So I thought, look, I'd like to do something like that. Of course, I don't want to be the painter that you take inspiration from other artists, and definitely this person was inspirational. And what I decided was, he wanted to capture the curve, so he captured them through painting, but I captured them through more sculptural. So I decided to actually do the thing to the canvas and then paint over them, and use photography as well. So I placed photography, and I used mixed media in the sense I carved out lino cuts, and I had been initiated into block printing in a few years before. I never really took off into full-on block printing, although I'd made some prints. But what got me was the lino cut and how you could make these bas reliefs from them. So I carved out, the K2, through, of course, photography that I'd seen on YouTube. I'd not been up to K2, but that would be an experience. The foothills, any further than that, and it's hazardous for your health. So I block printed a lot of the, not block printed, I'd carved out the lino cut and placed them onto the fiberglass, and then I proceeded to paint on them, and they got layered, and so some of them are lost totally. Oh, and then I put thick layers of this clear casting resin to give it a real three-dimensional look. So this has been going on for 5 years. I leave it, come back to it. I've got a series, and it goes through its processes, and I thought I'd just make a little YouTube video about that, because I'd like to go back to the Himalayas and reinvigorate some of the photography that I could use to actually go further into the series. I find photography is very important, still photography, to just capture something and give it a dimensionality through this mixed media process. So I like to use various media, and then I don't get bored with one media. I tend to have a nature which I just can't concentrate just on one particular thing. I'm not one of those kind of very focused artists, so it doesn't come out like that. The Russian painter was very focused for 30 years, just painting, going to the which he was doing the plein air, the outdoor painting, where with the easel, and there's photos of him. So he wasn't a photographer, but he definitely had been photographed by other photographers in that time. Or maybe not. Yes, he was. He was He had in the institute all his records are kept. All the legacy records, and there was photography of him and his wife. Doing his painting on his easel. So he had a long beard and very Russian sort of look. Very very focused, serious painter. I think the theosophy was more kind of a background philosophy. So he wasn't a philosopher of theosophy, where it's full on the logic of how Indian classical metaphysics works, which a lot of theosophists consider themselves more like religious philosophers. A little bit like the new movement to explain the mystical East in the new way, in the way of the eclectic way of world religion. So theosophy in a sense is seeing itself as more studies of religion, more so than being a cult, which I was part of, where you would actually believe in dualism of the mind-body dualism, and you'd practice that. While theosophists, as I'm aware of, I've been to quite a few of them, the meetings, are more to do with just looking at the different philosophical schools. There are different philosophical schools within the subcontinent. One of them is this dualism, mind-body dualism, where there's a soul and matter, which is yoga, part of the yoga. The others is this monism, where there's just spiritual. There is no matter, there's just idealism, so the world is a manifestation of the mind, it's an illusion. And there's even materialistic schools which just believe, well, what we are is just, the brain is the identity. There is no separate identity, but this material world, which is has this notion of elements, a little bit like the ancient classical Greek atomists who believed that the world was just the reduced, or the universe was reduced to particles, which had an ultimate atom, ultimate size. That's quite different than idealists who believe that the universe is a projection of mind, so there's no atoms, but it's just this one mental substance. And it can be theorized as different ways, and usually within India it's left to this notion of consciousness just being a kind of substrate that underlies everything, and we, as in our awareness, is basically just a part of that, like a flickering of that. It's the grossest form, which then constructs a manifold image, which is the objects, but they're also conscious. So the Himalayas, if you go into that theory, would be then conscious. The mountains are a projection of the mind. The closest Western theories that would come to that would be Bishop Berkeley's theory of idealism. So that was fully fledged sort of philosophical theory. So it came. So in India they'd come up with these sort of theories. Prior to that, their logical schools had developed a very consistent argumentation for these different types of monistic theories of the universe. And so, theosophists look at that. So I just am kind of giving that sort of backdrop to this theory of art. So this Russian artist, I believe, was more inclined to believe in this spiritual monism. So painting this was just like painting the subtle. So the Himalayas depicts this sort of transcendental sphere. So it's a higher state of consciousness. So when you go higher than that, you're actually going to these notions of subtler planes of yourself. So there's all these different gradations of self. The growth is relating to, you know, desiring chocolate cake and eating a lot of it, whilst painting colours would be a subtler desire, but still a desire nonetheless, although one that, you know, you could feel the bliss arising, constant level of bliss, while eating a chocolate cake, it's direct and imminent when you're eating it, but then you desire more of it when you're not having the chocolate cake. And that's not so with painting. So after the painting, you know, you're quite calm and you felt you've done the work, and there is a sense of, by looking at it, there's a sense of feeling of pleasure. So the sense of this real building up of an authentic sense of pleasure, which is known of Anand. So a lot of the, well, all of the sadhus have at their official end name Anand, like Shivananda, Satchidananda, Vivekananda. So Ananda is like their surname. Yeah, that's my bliss, which denotes bliss. So that's what you're after in that sphere, to come closer to this universal consciousness. Anand, you want to find the truth, which is Sat, and then Chit is consciousness. So Sat, Chit, Anand. So this artist was looking for that, and you know, it gave an impetus to then find a way to interact that didn't require this hardcore philosophy, which a lot of the sadhus, you know, talk about. They lecture a lot, but this particular artist was not one of those people. And actually, because he wasn't an Indian person, probably felt that was not his place anyway. So it was more Russian. But this is what India attracted a lot of these spiritual seekers like myself. And I was fascinated that this was a person that had left a legacy there. And I decided then to do this, and it's been ongoing. It's not a full-on. I'll go into different projects, but this is just one of them, and it's being shown here. What I'm at the present time is just trying to find a new way to integrate the narrative. So I'm looking at a way to get back to India and find a way where I could, you know, build upon that series. So who knows where it'll go to.